a huge controversy at a major science fiction convention, why I like to go into books blind, and the space opera that killed me. This is episode 2 of Reading Amok. Kim here, the director of this literature cruise ship. Welcome to me and my books. We are going straight into some book news today because there has been a huge scandal taking place with Worldcon that I just really have to talk about because it's super important. But real quick, before we get into the news segment, I would like to throw out a huge thank you to @RogersReads for the amazing title suggestion. The segment where I give you my unscripted thoughts about what I've recently read will no longer be called my book report. It's going to be named something else. Because Meg @RogersReads suggested I add the word "the" to my book report to make it sound more journalistic. And that was too good of a name for the news segment, and so I've decided to call the news segment The Book Report, and I will be naming my recently read stuff probably something much more generic. Who knows? We'll get there. This whole thing is a work in progress, and lucky for you, you're just on the journey with me. So without further ado, I want to put on my newscaster voice and tell you about some book and publishing news. So we're going to do that right now with The Book Report. Let's start with our top story. Worldcon 2018, set to take place in less than a month, is receiving some backlash after snubbing and disrespecting marginalized writers. Worldcon organizers misgendered a Hugo Award finalist and rejected pitches for Own Voices panels. Organizers defended the No Own Voices decision by stating that not enough people know what Own Voices actually is. They responded with, quote, "Maybe 20% of Worldcon 76 members know what it means." According to Worldcon, the movement and encouragement of marginalized creators writing of their own experiences known as Own Voices is not well known enough nor important enough to devote convention time and panels to it. This has led to some of the authors withdrawing from the event, including J.Y. Lang, R. Lemberg, Sarah Gailey, and Alexandra Rowland. This particular podcaster, reader, and writer is heartbroken and angry over the mistreatment of such talented authors, and is delighted that Worldcon wasn't even considered for her events calendar this year. Worldcon is an annual science fiction convention organized by the World Science Fiction Society. They are also responsible for the Hugo Awards, a number of literary awards given for achievement in science fiction and fantasy, which they present during the convention. The Hugo Awards are argued to be one of the highest of literary honors. They are indeed a big deal. This behavior from Worldcon has left this reader disappointed and frustrated over why a community of readers and writers specializing in a genre where the special and unique are celebrated can't seem to apply that perspective to their fellow human beings. It's disgusting to hear these groups of beautiful people being silenced yet again. As a writer, I am saddened to hear my fellow authors are being shoved to the sidelines when we need them most. If this behavior from Worldcon continues, should one of my works ever be nominated for a Hugo Award, I just may politely tell the organizers to suck it. In a recent update, the chair of Worldcon 76, Kevin Roche, issued a statement apologizing, saying, quote, "I am sorry we slighted and angered so many of the people we are gathering to meet, honor, and celebrate. This was a mistake. Our mistake." He also stated that the preliminary programming information has been taken down and that the organization is starting over with the program. His statement has been met with some warmth, but also skepticism, as the event is less than a month away. A link to more news on the subject can be found in the show notes. Talk of the Nobel Prize for Literature has yet to die down. The 2018 Nobel Prize for Literature was cancelled earlier this spring. A scandal from a Swedish Academy member's husband led to the resignation of some of its members. Subsequently, it was announced that the Nobel Prize for Literature has been cancelled for this year, and instead the Swedish Academy will give 2 awards in 2019. This has led to the creation of the New Academy, a committee comprised of over 100 writers, journalists, and other authorities on culture. An alternative literary award will be announced this October by the New Academy and will be presented at a super fancy ceremony this December. Swedish librarians have submitted their nominees and worldwide voting is now open. There is a link in the show notes should you choose to cast a vote. Once voting closes on August 14th, the top 4 authors will move on to a final assessment by the New Academy's expert jury. More information about the process and the purpose of the New Academy can be found in the link provided within the show notes, as well as a direct link for voting. Readers who are also fans of the internet will soon be rejoicing. BookTube-a-thon is rapidly approaching, taking place July 30th through August 5th. BookTube-a-thon is an annual readathon for those who talk about books or enjoy watching people talk about books on the popular online video platform YouTube. Many from the reading community on YouTube, affectionately called BookTube, take part in a community-wide reading marathon yearly. BookTube-a-thon encompasses other social media platforms as well. There are reading sprints on Twitter hosted by different booktubers and Instagram challenges sponsored this year by Owlcrate. There are also reading challenges for the readathon, some of which include letting a coin toss decide your first read a book with green on the cover, and read a book with a beautiful spine. It appears that the BookTube community is excited for their upcoming BookTube-a-thon. Many have posted TBR videos listing the books they'll be reading during the readathon and what books they will be reading to fulfill the challenges. BookTube-a-thon is hosted by booktuber Ariel Bissett with the help of guest booktubers on the BookTube-a-thon YouTube channel, Twitter, and Instagram. Links for the BookTube-a-thon YouTube channel and social media accounts will be given in the show notes should you wish to participate in this year's BookTube-a-thon. And lastly, registration for BookNet Fest opened in June. BookNet Fest is a live convention for the online book community held in Orlando, Florida. This year, the convention will be held September 7th and 8th at the Carib Royale. BookNet Fest holds panels, workshops, and discussions about book reading along with touches of different publishing topics. It is intended for both readers and bookish content creators. Speakers and panelists are being announced regularly on the BookNet Fest Twitter page. A link will be provided in the show notes for both BookNet Fest and the BookNet Fest Twitter. It is important to note that this podcaster will be in attendance at BookNet Fest. Flights have been booked and the hotel is reserved. This is an exciting event and I am delighted to be attending. You can use that link in the show notes to learn more about BookNet Fest, to register, and to book a reservation at the Carib Royale. BookNet Fest is a non-profit, so the cost of registration is low. I'm looking forward to meeting many readers alike at BookNet Fest and hope to meet some of you there as well. Updates about BookNet Fest will be reported on this podcast when they are announced. See you in Orlando. Thus concludes this edition of the Book Report. If there's book or publishing news you wish to be covered, you can reach out on social media. The Reading Amok podcast is on Instagram and Facebook at Reading Amok, or you can find me on Twitter at Kim Barbu. Sometimes it is hard to shake that newscaster voice. Maybe I was destined for NPR. Who knows? Anyway, we are moving on to the segment of the podcast where we talk about a bookish topic, and then you give me all your thoughts and feelings on it, and we go back and forth discussing the yays and the nays and the whys and the hows and the you get it. Today we are talking about reading blind. For those of you that don't know, reading blind is where you start reading a book when you essentially don't know anything about it. So you're going into it knowing nothing, which is the blind part. See how that works? I usually prefer a genre and maybe a one-liner describing the book, but not always. Genre is very often enough for me. I very, very much prefer going into books blind. It is my preferred way of reading. It just works better for me. It gives me a better experience, and I'll tell you why. The first reason is spoilers. Fairly obvious. Sometimes I honestly feel like a synopsis can give you a minor or even a major spoiler, and I hate that. I hate that. I avoid reviews that have a detailed synopsis, and I won't give too much of a plot description in my own book reviews. What is a spoiler for one may not be for another, so I keep my so I keep the synopsis brief. I prefer like an elevator pitch, and that's it. An elevator pitch is kind of a term used in the book writing and publishing world, and probably some other sort of creative industries as well, where if you end up in an elevator with an important person, you only have that elevator ride to tell them what your book slash creative project, whatever it is about. So you essentially have one or two sentences to say this is what it's about. So that's an elevator pitch, and those I'm usually very okay with. But I don't need them. The second reason I like to go into books blind is because of the anticipation. If I've read a synopsis or if I've heard a lot about the plot of a book or the idea of a book or what may or may not be happening in the book, the whole time I'm reading, I'm thinking, hey, when's that thing going to happen? Like I'm waiting the entire beginning of the book. And it's not a fun experience. Like the entire time I'm thinking, okay, that's a really cool thing, but I know that something's like about XYZ is going to happen, and how is this going to affect that? And why is this happening if that's going to happen? Because I know, and if I don't know, I get to just read. I'm not sitting there with this giant expectation on my shoulders. I'm just reading. I'm just enjoying. My life is better. Makes sense? Awesome. I like anticipation, but I don't like expected anticipation, I guess is what I'm saying. Like I like not knowing the big life-changing thing that's going to happen to the protagonist, because I can just be surprised by it. I can just draw my own conclusions from it. I'm not sitting around waiting for it to happen. Another reason I like to go into books blindly is because I like to feel smart. Also, I'm snobby. When I have no idea what the book is about, I can make predictions, and then when I'm right, I feel like really smart. It's totally an ego thing. Not even sorry. I am who I am. I like feeling smart and superior to people. So, there you have it. When I'm like sensing foreshadowing or symbolism or any of those sorts of things, I like to do that without a frame of reference. So I'm not looking for foreshadowing and things, and I feel smart when I find it without being told to look for it. Like I feel amazing. I also really, really love that moment when I'm like, I totally knew that was going to happen. I'm like a freaking genius. Like I really like feeling like I am smarter than I am. Okay? Like that's really all that this boils down to. That's all that this reasoning is that I like to stroke my ego with a moment of told you so. Basically. And it's the most ridiculous thing, but it is what it is. And I also like that feeling of whodunit. Kind of like I like trying to figure out what's going to happen, and I like trying to figure out who the killer is, and I like trying to guess all these sorts of things right from the get-go, not from what the synopsis told me. Sometimes the synopsis will give something where I'm just like, oh, okay, I'll probably suspect that guy, but that's the synopsis telling me to suspect that guy, so now I can't suspect that guy, and that's a weird example, but you get it. I like to sit there and try to figure it out for myself, and sometimes that leads me to feeling really super smart, which I am always okay with. One of the last things I want to talk about reading blind is that I love being surprised by a book. This is kind of the other side of that coin of feeling smart. If I'm reading blind and I think I know what might happen, and then something totally surprising and better happens, I'm more thrilled than if I was able to predict it. Like, If I know the synopsis, then I might have more context, and thus it surprises me less, and that's less of a fun experience. This is kind of a mix, I guess, of like my first reason about spoilers and the last reason about feeling smart, I suppose, but just going in blind leaves me open to more surprises, which is a super yay. Like, let's be honest, it's so much more exciting when a book is able to really grab you and kind of throw you around. Like, if it takes a turn that you had no idea was coming. If I read a synopsis, I might have a hint at what may be coming. It may lead me to a hint about what may be coming. I much prefer to be totally surprised and thrilled by that. It just makes for a better reading experience. Like, that's really all I can say, is that reading blind 100%, well, I guess 90% of the time, gives me a better reading experience. There's a rare occasion where a synopsis would have been nice. But, and also let's just very quickly talk about when a synopsis isn't right. Have you ever read a book where you read the back of the book and then when you start reading the book, it's not really about that at all? Like, it's totally about something else. Like, that drives me crazy in itself, which is why as a writer, I'm very, very careful with my book blurbs and synopsis, because it's like, it needs to tell you what the story is going to be about, but it also needs to tell you what the real message is a little bit. Like, a little bit. It doesn't, I don't need like this whole like thing about the deep dive and what really is down that rabbit hole. I just need a sense that, oh, I'm reading a murder mystery, but it's actually a reflection of society. You know what I mean? Like, I like to come to those conclusions as I'm reading. And I don't like when I read the back of a book and it doesn't give me anything like that, or it kind of like gives you the entire first chapter when all that is just leading up to the story. It's not what the real story is. And so I just avoid it. I avoid it because I end up disappointed and or spoiled. So that's why I like to go into books blind. Let's see what the cool beans have to say about this. I put out this bookish topic on my social media accounts, which you can find on Instagram and Facebook at Reading Amok, or you can find me on Twitter at KimBarbu. Linky links in the show notes for your convenience. But I put topics up there that we're going to be talking about on the podcast, and then I get your comments, and then I read your comments, and then I respond to your comments because it's fun. And bookish discussions, who doesn't love that? So let's see what you cool beans have to say. At Dyslexic Reader 1 said, genre is all I really need. I am usually the same. I mean, yeah, I mentioned that. I really honestly just think it's so fun to go, oh, science fiction, okay. And then it's this crazy epic space opera adventure you had no idea. And like, it just so much more fun. Part of what makes blind reading so exciting is how you have no idea what you're in for. And then you get that moment of, oh, it's a vampire zombie love story. Neat. If you read the synopsis, you would have already had that figured out. And where's the fun in that? Also, can someone please refer me to or write a vampire zombie romance? Because why not? They're both undead. They can share a romantic meal of blood and brains. How precious. But I digress. Moving on, at Midge219 commented, if the book is by one of dozens of my favorite authors, no info is necessary. I just dive in and am rarely disappointed. If it's a new author that has piqued my interest, a little information is good, but please no spoilers. And DoorsInTime_M said, I like knowing as little as possible, especially when I know the author is good. Okay, I kind of lumped these two comments together because they both touched on something about authors that I want to talk about, because I would totally agree. If I trust the author, I don't even need a genre. Like, let's be honest. If it's one of my authors, perfect. It's what I call an auto read. For example, Neil Gaiman. That guy has never let me down, ever. Pretty sure he's my favorite living author, but I hesitate in saying that because, like, as soon as I do, there's like 13 other authors that come to mind, and I'm like, it's like picking a favorite book or a favorite child, picking a favorite author. Just you understand. You feel my pain. But yeah, Neil Gaiman has never disappointed me, ever. I don't need to know a thing. If it says Gaiman, I'm sold. Don't care about anything else. Even if he like co-wrote it, I'm going to read the book. I won't even bother to see if it's a novel or short story collection. Like, I see Neil Gaiman and yoink, it's mine. Like, that's all I need. So yeah, if it's an author I love, no questions asked. If it's a new author, then I at least need a genre and maybe an elevator pitch, just to kind of like see if it's like something creative and unique that I'm going to be drawn to. At _ W.A. Roberts says, I found that I usually wind up enjoying a book more when I've started reading it blind with no real idea what it's about. Yes, 100% yes. Yeah. Like, I feel like you get the full effect if you're going into it blind. Otherwise, you end up dealing with the whole anticipation / waiting thing that I mentioned, or it gets spoiled, like old milk. Nobody wants to read a book that's like stinky, chunky, expired, spoiled milk. Unpleasant. That's really what it is when you get spoiled with a book. It's like bad milk. Like, ugh, bummer. Like, ew, no, thank you. Nobody wants that. At Miranda B016 says, I want to have at least a vague idea before I start reading. Sometimes I choose what book to read based on my mood. Sometimes because I want to learn something, etc. So the genre and or basic plot is important at minimum. Okay, yeah. I see what you're saying, because if you're mood reading, if you're going for a certain kind of idea or mood, yeah, okay, yeah, you're probably right. It's good to know a little something, because if you are kind of looking for that, like, I don't know, space opera kind of feeling, and you pick up a science fiction book and it's like a dystopian robot thing, then it's like, this isn't at all the feeling I wanted, and then you're kind of disappointed, which is going to make you not like the book, which is going to make it a bad reading experience, which just, leads to not great things. So yeah, if I'm reading with a goal in mind, like to learn something or to feel something specific, or you're mood reading and I need to know what, if it's going to fit, then yeah, okay, I need a little more, possibly than, I'll probably need a little more than an elevator pitch. I might need maybe not a full synopsis, but I'll need a little something just to let me know that this fits the mood and the goal that I have in mind. So, okay. All right. Fair enough at Miranda B016. You've convinced me slightly, but yeah, okay. Excellent point. I also think this will matter if you're a person who DNFs a book. DNF stands for did not finish. So if you stop reading a book and quit it, basically, if you're quick to put a book down that isn't working for you, I feel like it's a little easier to go into a book blind, because you're kind of investing a little less, I feel like. If you're someone who insists on powering through and tries with all their might to finish a book, like, you need to know if this is likely to be worth the investment that you're going to be putting into it, so to speak. But I could go on and on about the pros and cons of DNFing, and that's another topic that we'll probably be covering very soon, if not in the next episode, because super intrigued to kind of hear people's sort of level of commitment and investment and things like that with DNFing. So be thinking about that, I guess, and get ready to tell me all your thoughts and feelings, because I like to hear them. All right, I guess if I am trying to reach a goal, or if I am pretty committed to not quitting the book, if it's like DNFing, this is not something I want to do, then maybe going into it blind isn't as easy. Fair enough. A huge thank you to those of you who commented. These conversations are so important, if not the most important part of this podcast. I love hearing what you have to say, and your stellar insights are just always helpful. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. You are all cool beans, legit. Speaking of cool beans, have you heard of the Princess Agenda? It's a new YouTube channel offering social commentary, royal life advice, and hilarious fun facts from fairytale princesses. These ladies have traveled to the internet kingdom to give their insights and opinions on trending topics in the modern world, as well as spilling all sorts of royal secrets about their life as famous princesses. There's even book reviews from Belle. It's too good. You can use the linky link in the show notes to visit the Princess Agenda and become a citizen of the kingdom today. Alrighty, let's move on to the segment I am currently calling Reads, Reviews, and Recommendations. because I can't come up with a better name yet. This is where I tell you what I have recently read, what I thought about it in quick little mini reviews, and then whether I recommend it to you or not, basically. It is my thoughts and feelings on what I have read, and it's unscripted, and we ramble, and we go on. Maybe that's what reading reads and rambling reads. Maybe I should call it that. Okay, I'm gonna work ramblings into the segment title because that's really what it is. It's me rambling about what I've read. Like, that's rambling reviews. I don't know. You guys, please, you're smarter than me. Help me out. I really should have thought of clever names for every segment before I actually started and launched the podcast. But listen, I don't do things conventionally. You probably have that figured out by now. But this is just where we're at. Okay, here we go. This is what I've read recently. I want to start first with Fight Club by Chuck Palahniuk. Palahniuk, that's how you say it? Palahniuk, that I think is how you say it. I looked it up one time, really long time ago, can't remember. Some years ago, I read Damned by Chuck Palahniuk, which I actually really liked. It's a story about a teenage girl who gets sent to hell when she dies, and it's her in hell, and it's like super fascinating and interesting and really crazy and weird in all the right ways, and just loved it. Loved the dark, but the funny and everything. So I loved that, and I mean, Fight Club is like his well-known thing. Like, Chuck Palahniuk is known for Fight Club, except you're not supposed to talk about it. But we're going to talk about it because I'm not in Fight Club, so I can talk about Fight Club. Suck it. Okay, here we go. Fight Club, if you don't know, is the story about a guy who is just living his mediocre life and is super bored with it. So he meets this new friend named Tyler Durden. I just think it's so funny that his name is Tyler. I feel like that's such a non-threatening name, and he's such like a cool guy that anyway, he meets a guy named Tyler Durden, and they start a fight club where a bunch of dudes meet in a bar basement and just beat the crap out of each other on like a weekly basis or something. I don't know. Anyway, they get together and they duke it out, and then they feel better about themselves and they feel manly and whatever. Okay, so without spoiling it, this book is interesting because you learn what Tyler Durden really is, and I don't know, I feel like I can't really spoil it because most people have seen the movie or at least know enough about it. But yeah, the movie was quite gosh, I don't even think it was a cult classic. I think it's just like a legit, pretty beloved movie by a lot of groups of people. Very famous, starred Brad Pitt, so you got that. Hunky Brad Pitt without a shirt, all like sweaty beating dudes up. Cool. Yeah, so I don't know. I liked it. I thought the story was good. I thought the mental state of main character's name. Oh my gosh, I don't even know his name. I just know Tyler's name. What's his name? His name is not Steve, but I want to say his name is Steve. You guys. Wow, does it even ever say his name? I don't know. I'm just like flipping through this, looking for this guy's name. Anyway, main character guy. Wow, I really should take better notes and things about this, you guys. This unscripted thing is difficult. But I don't even know where I was going about him. But yeah, his mental state throughout the book is kind of fascinating to watch him sort of mentally decompose a little bit, I guess, is kind of the best way I want to describe it. But it's super fascinating, and it had enough question marks as you're reading it that you have to keep reading it. Like, if that makes sense. Like as you go deeper into the story, like, you're just like, what? And then like you have to keep going to try to figure out the what, which just leads you to another what? Like, which I kind of like when I read. I like when you get an answer, it leads to more questions. I think that's a reason I like Dan Brown sometimes. Not that I'm comparing Chuck Palahniuk to Dan Brown by any means. Please do not mistake what I said for that, because that's just not a comparison I want to draw. But I think that the way the story is just super intriguing, and it's super like, you kind of just want to keep diving down this dumpster fire of a rabbit hole. Like, it's like, I gotta like see this guy totally self-destruct. I have to watch this happen. It's like kind of the way a soap opera does that to you, but in a much grittier and more meaningful way. Not that soap operas aren't invaluable or aren't worth anything, I guess. Soap operas have value, is my point. I used to watch them, but that's a whole nother thing. But the point is, like, I think that Fight Club just really explores this guy's psycho brain, and it's super fascinating to watch. Like, you can't look away. Like a bad car wreck, you just can't look away. You got to see what's going to happen, and I think it's got some good characters, and it's like it's confusing enough to make you wonder and think, but not so confusing that you don't know what's going on. Does that make sense? Like, it's the right amount of weird and confusing, or not confusing is the wrong word for it. It's the right amount of weird and tricky, I guess, is the kind of thing. I did kind of rate it 4 out of 5 stars, some of my notes, what do they say? Love the dialogue style. Oh, without the narrator quotes. Yeah, so the way that the narrator speaks to Tyler and things like that, he doesn't, Chuck Palahniuk doesn't have just like one sentence with quotes and then a response from the other guy in a new paragraph with quotes. Like, it's kind of like the way the narrator, he's like, well, I said this. And that's just it. Like, there's no quote about it. I kind of liked that. It was an awesome style that I really liked. I thought it was clever, and I thought it was clear while still being mysterious. Mysterious isn't the right word either. It's like this sort of suspenseful question mark. It's kind of the best way to describe it. But unfortunately, I did find it slightly repetitive at times and kind of inappropriate on purpose. Like with what the guys do, like when they get these sort of temp jobs as catering servers and things like that, like the stuff they do, it's like they're kind of promoting this gross anarchy without a reason, which I guess is kind of the point of anarchy. But like, it just, they're kind of trying to stick it to the man without having a reason, without having a personal reason to stick it to the man, if that makes sense. But that was just kind of like gross boy humor sometimes that I was like, it's gross. But it didn't kill the book for me by any means. Still really liked it. Blah, blah, blah. Words are hard. Yeah, Fight Club. Chuck Palahniuk. I do recommend it to people who kind of like books that make you think and books that make you, books with question marks, I guess. That's like the best way I can feel like I can describe Fight Club, was like there were so many intriguing question marks that I just had to keep going. And Chuck Palahniuk has a fantastic writing style. He's got a nice clarity about him, which is something I like, a simplicity in writing that I really love and try to emulate, but can never seem to get there. But I do know that where I read there, my copy has some sort of interviews with the author in the back, and it was interesting to learn that the whole book was inspired by a single chapter of the book. Like, Palahniuk wrote as a short story one of the chapters, and then it kind of blossomed into this whole book, and so it was super fascinating to me. Anyway, and then there was also some talk about like BYU and things like that, which I live in Utah, and so that kind of stuff is always like super funny to read about. But anyway, total side note and derailment on that. But Fight Club by Chuck Palahniuk, 4 out of 5 stars if you insist on a 5-star rating. On my point system, it got 17 out of 25, which is pretty dang good. So yeah, there you have it. Do recommend. It's a little crude if that's something you don't like, but there you have it. Okay, next I have to talk to you about this because I just have so many things to say. Okay, Dr. Benjamin Franklin's Dream America by Damian Lincoln Ober. Okay, I got this book in January. I started it in January, maybe February. Pretty sure I started it in January, actually. But it came out not that long ago. I want to say just barely last year. I'm looking, I'm reading. Oh, copyright 20, first edition published 2018. So yeah, it came out the very beginning of this year. I got it not right as it released, but very quickly. Okay, Dr. Benjamin Franklin's Dream America, a novel of the digital revolution, is an alternate history. And I honestly don't think I've read another alternate history book. I want to. This was not the one to start with, I will tell you that. But it is an alternate history about the American Revolution and the signers of the Declaration of Independence if they had the internet. So it's a little bit funny because they still ride horses, but they have like Facebook. So there you go. It's essentially this sort of examination of our social media usage and how like, because it really morphs in this book as time goes on. And it is a fascinating and thought-provoking examination of what social media has become and how people interact with it. Because for some people, it's so ingrained in them. And I mean, not even in an addiction kind of way, because I know there's a lot of talk of social media addiction and things like that. But this is like it really is an identifier in a way. Like it is part of our kind of, not really makeup or anything, but it's so, wow, it's so just who we are. I am going to start with saying that I really wanted to love this book. I am a super nerd when it comes to politics. And so like the American Revolution is very fascinating to me, and it's something I want to know a lot of things about. And I was really intrigued with this. Oh, but unfortunately there was just one too many weird things that the author did with it. Because first of all, it's a weird premise, the American Revolution with the internet and like posting the Declaration of Independence on Facebook, so to speak, and all this stuff. And so that's like one level of weird, which was a level I'm fine with, like 100% fine with. And then there was this level of weird in the writing style, because the book is told, every chapter is from the essential like deathbed of a signer of the Declaration of Independence. So each chapter is one of the signers, and it's like the moment they die. And that's how the story goes. And so I thought that was really intriguing and really clever and really cool. But because we had that layer of weird and different with the already layer of Benjamin Franklin having the internet, that like it just was like, okay. And then there was one more level of weird that I'm not going to talk about because it would be a spoiler. But then it like went a step further with a weird layer, and that was just too much for me. I needed, honestly, only one. Could have dealt with 2 layers. 3 was just like, okay, this is like being weird on purpose. And I'm so disappointed because I wanted this to work for me. Like this book felt like it was written for me a little bit when I heard what it was about. And I guess as we were speaking about reading blind earlier, this one, the synopsis of it kind of misled me a little bit. It did tell me about that it's an alternate history with like, you know, internet and the way social media is woven into the fabric of society and all these things. And it says that it's from the deathbed of each signer of the Declaration of Independence. But I don't know, because of that, the story just didn't feel like it was told from point A to point B, which is usually something I like. Like I usually like when a story kind of jumps around in time if it's done right, and you get pieces that all come together at the end and it's like, whoa, mind-blowing. But this, that didn't work right, because you had just the chunks of time. I mean, it was going from A to B, but sometimes it was months apart and years apart, and it didn't work for me. And I wanted it to work for me, and that's such a bummer. And then it got extra weird, and I don't know. I wanted it to be, I guess, a little more straightforward in its storytelling, which I think still could have been done if from the deathbed of each signer. And I wanted to say nice things about this, and I wanted to fall in love with it, and I wanted to to love it. I really wanted to just love and adore it because it seemed like a book I was going to love and adore, and then it wasn't, which I feel like is all the more disappointing. Like, because it's like this betrayal. It's like, dang it, you were supposed to be wonderful and you betrayed me. There were a couple good quotes in here that I noted. What else did I? One about what is it? Hold on, let's see. It says, poetry, chess, these are real things, Mr. Hopkinson. Liberty is just a platform for enjoying them. I thought that was a cool quote. I marked that. I thought that was nice. What else did I note? I did like how I kind of cared about each signer when it was their time, when the story was from their perspective. It was interesting because you hear about each signer from the other chapters because they all knew each other, and so you kind of form these opinions about them, and then when it gets to their time, oddly enough, you kind of care about them. And so it's just funny how quickly my opinion changed of each character in this book, and I liked that. I thought that was really impressive, and it's not easy for an author to do, so kudos for that. I did like the idea of the deathbed way of telling the story. Like I said, it was just another level of, it didn't work for me just because there were so many different levels of unique going on. I did note that I wish the author had been clearer about his real message, because I feel like the author is saying social media is kind of terrible in the way we're letting it take over our lives and things, and so many of these signers are like succumbing to different ways of it, and it's tainting and kind of rotting society and things like that. But I feel like he didn't quite make that statement all the way, so I'm not sure that's his real message, if that makes sense. So I wish there had just been a clear moment, a little more. And that is totally personal. That is just me. I could be missing something, but okay, so Dr. Benjamin Franklin's Dream America, a novel of the digital revolution by Damien Lincoln Ober. Would recommend if you like things that are weird to be weird on purpose. If you're looking for just a little more classic alternate history, this is not the book for you. If you love Thomas Jefferson, this book is probably not for you, because I feel like he's not really a beloved guy in this book. I don't want to just say don't read it, because I think there are people that this will totally resonate with. I may just not be smart enough to appreciate this book. Does that make sense? If you're smart, this may be like right up your alley. So that's how I'm going to recommend it. If you like weird just for the sake of things that are weird, and if you are smart, then yes, give it a go. Maybe pass on it if you just like regular historical fiction / alternate history. Okay, the last book I want to talk to you about is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This is the space opera that killed me. Like, oh my gosh. Okay, I kind of fully expected this book to blow me away. I'm going to start with that. I've heard nothing but great and fantastic things about it from very trusted and respectable and reputable people, friends of mine, whose bookish opinions I trust 100%. So, so I knew I was going to love it. I didn't have many more expectations for it other than that, though. So, okay, The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers is a very character-driven space opera. That's kind of all I want to say about it, because that's pretty much how I went into it. Actually, I didn't even go into it knowing it was a space opera. I went into it knowing it was character-driven and that the characters were amazing. That was all I kind of let myself hear about it, because I wanted to read it and love it. And, there you have it. So this was just so great. So many cool and amazing and fantastic characters. And wonderful and amazing species, and we had like some really cool like dealings with sort of racism between the species, which was cool. We had like not that racism is cool. Let's like not let that blow by. That is not at all what I meant. What I meant was it was cool to see that, because that is like a real thing that we deal with now on little planet Earth. So it was kind of interesting to read about it from a different species perspective of the way they kind of revere some species and snub off other ones, and different ones for different things and all these kinds of things. So it's very, very interesting to hear it. And I don't even think it's like full on racism by any means. I think maybe it's just like, how we treat people that are different from us and the way we interact with them. So that was so cool. And there's also like a lot of, not really a lot. No, there's a lot of dealing with like sexuality and how appropriate versus inappropriate it is based on like your species and things like that. And I just was so incredibly fascinated by everything going on there. I just thought it was, oh my gosh, it was so good. It was so good. Like, it was so cool to hear these different opinions and insights and perspectives on that, on what sexuality means for different people. And neat. Oh, so neat. And I honestly just really adore each of these characters. I love the interaction with the AI, the artificial intelligence, and how she has like personality, and how the relationship between the AI and her creator just, there were some tears. There were some tears. Like, I'll say it. I'm gonna come out and say it. There were some tears. But I can't say enough good things about The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. Like, I have like 13 people I want to just send a copy of this book to. I am so disappointed it took me so long to read it, and I'm very anxious to get my hands on the second book, and the third book just released. Will be releasing like this week. It either just barely released or will be releasing like within the coming weeks. It is very, very on its way. Wayfarers, that's the name of this series. Wayfarers. Volume number 1 is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, and A Close and Common Orbit is the second book. Record of a Spaceborne Few is the third book that is coming out, or is just barely out, but I need to grab the other two and probably do an entire series review on it, because I absolutely loved the first book. I was blown away. I am a character-driven reader, and I think that is probably my only real complaint with the book, was the fact that if you're more of a plot-driven reader, this book may not do it for you. It's gonna feel like it has a pacing issue, I think, is my only real negative thing to say about it. And I don't think it has a pacing issue. I thought it moved rather well. But if you are a plot-driven reader, you'll feel like it has a pacing issue and that it just drags to get to the story, because it's so character-focused, which is what I happen to love about it, and what I know a lot of other readers love about it, because a lot of us are character-driven readers. We prefer to really feel and bond with these characters, and then what happens to them is kind of a byproduct, and then we care about the plot because we care about the characters. What did I say? What else did I say? Oh yeah, I prefer character over plot, but balance is best. And I think this did tip the scale a little bit, where it didn't have the, if you need that balance of plot and character driven, this one didn't have it. It favored the character side a lot more. Yeah, and then I just have all these hearts. Love the characters. Love them. I just love them. 4.5 stars. 4.5 stars. Ugh, suck it. 5 stars. We're giving it 5 stars. Stupid 4. No, that's stupid. It's stupid, because star ratings are subjective, just like book reviews and pretty much everything else. And so, like, we're just gonna say that even though it may feel like it has a pacing issue, if you are not a character-driven reader, I don't care. I am a character-driven reader, so it didn't feel like it had a pacing issue, so I'm giving it 5 stars, and I loved it. And The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers, highly recommend. Highly, highly recommend, especially if you like science fiction, especially if you like space operas, especially if you like character-driven stories. You do not have to like science fiction and space operas. If you are a character-driven reader, I think you'll like this book regardless. I really do. It was like the characters were that good. And the way Chambers wrote them and speaks about them and shows you them and all their wonderfulness and their flaws and their quirks and their just beauty and fantasticalness. I just bravo, Becky Chambers. Okay? Bravo. You did it. It was great. I loved it. Loved it, loved it. Cannot recommend it enough. The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. That is going to wrap it up for this rambling reading requiem. That's not what this segment's going to be called. Sounds too much like rectum. Wow, we've derailed once again. You guys, I really should just call this podcast, but I digress because it's like all I do. That is going to do it for me and this episode of Reading Amok. If you've got the time, please consider heading over to iTunes and leaving us a positive review. It really helps out. And until next time, please remember to read what you want, not what you should, because life is too crappy. Life is crappy. Be sure to read what you want, not what you should, because life is too short to read crappy books. Read freely.